Hi, this is Mr. Dyer, and today I'd like to talk briefly about the 14 points, which is also the topic of our World History B Block 5 assignment. So the 14 points was something pretty important a little over 100 years ago, when the World War I was coming to an end and it became obvious that the Allies, which the United States was part of the Allies, was going to win. Our president, Woodrow Wilson, really wanted to avoid another world war. And he had 14 things he just loved to see the US and the rest of the world adopt. There's just really a set of ideas to prevent another world war and create a lasting peace, was kind of his words. Some of the things he wanted to see instituted is promoting open diplomacy. Well, what's that mean? Well, as you remember, one of the causes of World War I was the alliance system. So all these secret agreements and secret treaties. So that was one of the major causes of World War I. So therefore, he thought that all treaties created, all discussion should be out in the open for all world leaders to know about, as well as the citizens of these respective countries. Thought free trade between countries is very important to reducing the likelihood of another world war. So relate to today, we can see that with globalization, we buy so many things from so many other countries and they buy from us, that if we were to go to war with somebody who we might have political, philosophical differences with, like China, it would both hurt their economy and our economy. So when you rely so heavily on trade with somebody else, you're probably less likely willing to go to war with them. So another thing, reducing weapons. As you learned with World War I, that it just created killing by the tens of the millions at a scale history had never seen before due to industrialization. So when business owners are producing things in factory and a country goes to war, well, guess what? Those factories are converted to producing weapons, and research and development goes to improving weapons. So we've seen that throughout history, especially after the Industrial Revolution. So another thing, allowing self-determination for nations. So you remember from World History A that imperialism is really when a stronger nation controls a weaker nation, extracting their resources, oftentimes enslaving the people that originally lived in that country, and just for the benefit only of the stronger country and to the detriment of the weaker country. Okay, lastly, Woodrow Wilson wanted to create a League of Nations. So really a big table, everybody could sit down and hammer out an agreement when two countries or more had beefs with each other. So we see today we have the United Nations that was brought in after World War II. So the League of Nations was kind of a precursor to that. So I think this short 4-minute history.com video explains Wilson's 14 points pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and play that. So watch along, you'll have a much better understanding of Wilson's 14 points.
On January 8, 1918, President Woodrow Wilson delivered his famous 14-point speech, where he outlined the plan to end World War I and secure world peace. When the war broke out in 1914, Wilson adopted a policy of neutrality with no intention of involving the U.S. in a foreign war. But the U.S. couldn't remain isolated for long. In January 1917, British intelligence intercepted and decoded a message known as the Zimmerman Telegram, in which Germany asked Mexico to ally with them against the United States. Then, on February 1st of the same year, Germany announced unrestricted submarine warfare and started sinking merchant and passenger ships with U.S. citizens on board, something they had agreed not to do after sinking the Lusitania in 1915. The Lusitania, a British ocean liner, was torpedoed without warning, leading to the deaths of over 1,100 people, including 128 Americans. This was the final straw. On April 2nd, 1917, President Woodrow Wilson went before a joint session of Congress to request a declaration of war against Germany, Just 2 days later, on April 4th, Congress declared war. The war was brutal and expensive. In a little under 2 years of fighting, the US had spent $32 billion and lost over 116,000 men. Wilson wanted the war to end, but when announcing his 14 points in January of 1918, Wilson didn't just want to end the war to protect America. He hoped to prevent wars from ever happening again. So together with his advisor and friend, Colonel Edward M. House, President Wilson organized a group of 150 political and social scientists to study Allied and American policy all over the globe, collecting nearly 2,000 reports and 1,200 maps. This would inform the idealistic 14 points, which would address causes of the World War and also propose solutions to ensure world peace in the future through policy and negotiations. 8 of the 14 points were aimed at resolving specific territorial issues among the countries involved in combat and securing borders and statehood for Italy, the Turkish part of the Ottoman Empire, Poland, and Austria-Hungary. 5 points covered general principles for a peaceful world: open treaties and agreements, freedom of the seas, free trade, reduction of armaments, and adjustment of colonial claims to land. These were all based on the principles of self-determination, the idea that nations should have the right to govern themselves without interference from other countries. The 14th and most influential point proposed that countries form an alliance to guarantee the political independence and territorial integrity of great and small states alike. The 14-point speech reflected a tradition of diplomatic idealism that would come to define Wilson's presidency. But how did that idealism translate into action? Well, most of Wilson's points were never fully realized, but one point in particular would have a big impact on the Treaty of Versailles and the end of World War I. When the Allies met in Versailles to create a treaty to end the war, they were less interested in Wilson's idealistic vision and more interested in regaining what they had lost and punishing Germany. To Wilson's disappointment, the points were barely integrated and only to the benefit of the Allies. Most of them weren't actually adopted or honored by anyone after the treaty was signed. However, the 14th point was incorporated: the creation of a world organization providing collective security. This would later be known as the League of Nations. Ironically, despite a campaign from Wilson, the US never actually joined the League of Nations. Wilson foreshadowed that without American membership in the League, there would be another world war within a generation. Sure enough, World War II would break out just 20 years later.
Okay, so now we can see that the 14 points, great idea. Unfortunately, not really a lot of it worked. So let's talk about the assignment, about the 14 points. So after reading through the information on Woodrow Wilson's 14 points, which again is in this block, and watching the videos provided, one I just showed, fill in this chart with your interpretation of what he meant in each section. So I gave you a quick summary. The actual wording is in the left column. Just write everything in your own words. I love it when learners use this assignment to compare things to maybe connect it somehow to what's going on in their life. So maybe the secret treaties. We all, friends have little friend groups. So, keeping secrets among different friend groups, something like that. So always love it when a learner can do that. So here's the top part of the assignment, but here's the actual wording. Can be kind of hard to understand. As I recall, President Wilson was at one time president of, I believe, Princeton University, an Ivy League school. So I have a hard time sometimes deciphering text like this. And with me as a history teacher, you probably do too. So that's okay. It's okay to use AI to maybe ask for what each of the 14 points were in simpler terms, as long as you take that information and reword it in your own unique, wonderful personality. So short summary, of this is just really open diplomacy. But I want, at least one good sentence on what that means here. So, as I said, open diplomacy. Countries should not be able to have secret agreements, and all negotiations among countries should be open to everyone, especially the citizens. That's my take. So, love it if you had something like that. But as I said, boy, these can be hard to read even for me. So you could always use AI, something I might do. Even I'm a history teacher. I might, if I just need one good sentence explaining the basics of something, I might just add 14 points for kids and see what I come up with. So I'm going to show you that here in just a second. But I think taking a good look at political cartoons, and that can tell us a lot about certain events and certain time periods. So most political cartoons are primary sources. This was done at the time that in 1918, when the United States decided not to join the League of Nations. The League of Nations was our idea, it was our president's idea. All these other countries decided to join, and our Congress votes not to join. So if you know anything about arches or architecture, the most important stone that holds everything, that whole bridge together, is called the keystone. We have here Uncle Sam relaxing up against the keystone. The keystone never gets put in place. So what do you think is going to happen to that bridge? So we can see the sign here. The League of Nations was signed by the President of the United States. So that tells us a lot about why the League of Nations failed. And like the video told us, 20 years later, another world war breaks out that was even more devastating than the First World War. So that was pretty scary. So as I said, if you're having trouble understanding difficult text, I sometimes might, as I said, add to my search for kids. So I think that's always a good thing. And if you do this, you can find out lots of cool things about the 14 points. We have History for Kids is a great resource. So if you want to go there, it does tell you basically in one or two good sentences, basic general information about the 14 points. So hopefully this helps you understand what the 14 points were, what the League of Nations was, and gives you a little bit more help when you complete this assignment. So as always, contact me with any questions. I like talking about this stuff, and I like discussing it with kids. So have a great day, and let me know if you need anything.